What's up everybody, it's Izzo. Welcome to the lab and welcome to Devlog 6. For today we're going to be continuing with implementing the debugger with the main purpose to monitor any bugs that may pop up from saving and loading. In Devlog 5 we added in the objects for our new debugger and then added in the facilities to access and exit it. We actually left off on a bit of a cliffhanger. We added in the functionality to display and hide the list independent of the actual debugger, but the buttons are kind of just hanging out there. First up in today's video, we'll be looking at adding functionality for the buttons and making it so we can navigate the file list. This way, we'll be able to look at all file lists and isolate which object is giving the saving and loading trouble. So let's get to it. Okay, so for the managing the button visibility, the first thing that we got is the case for if the debugger is hidden. Honestly, I don't know if this is even needed because of the fact that the entire layer is actually controlled by the access value, but just in case, I added it in anyways. So if the access value is 0 and these buttons are visible, they're gonna make them invisible. For the hiding of the buttons, if the debugger menu is active, it's checking if the show list is off, and if it is and these buttons are visible, it's making them invisible. As for the showing of the buttons, we got the show list flag being on and the access value being 1. If they are invisible, then they'll reappear. And basically this should happen every time, no matter which list is active. That was the entire point of having it be separate from the showing and the hiding of the list. So now just one more test before we move on. Okay, so now tab. And the buttons are hidden now, and now we're gonna put this to true, and the buttons are there, and now put it back to false, and the buttons are not there no more. Okay, we're good. Let's move on. Next up, what we're looking at is navigating the list. So we're gonna give those buttons the functionality they need in order to make it so we can see list 0 through 6. So right here we got the first event. The first event is letting us go to the next list. So what it's doing is it's checking to make sure that we're actually inside the debugger. Then it's checking the damping value for being, this is supposed to be last actually. So we're checking the list index after the access value, and we're checking to make sure that it's lower than 6, which is our greatest list. And then we're checking to make sure that damping is 0. That's our input refresh. When this event executes, the action is we're going to be adding 1 to list index and then setting that damping to 10. Same thing down here, we're just doing the inverse, so we're checking for the previous button this time. Access is still 1, damping needs to go down again. List index is actually being checked to be greater than 0 this time. If it's at 0, that means that we can't go any further back. Damping is at 0, so for the actions we got it to subtract from the list index just 1, and then set damping to 10, so that way these actions don't execute multiple times. The last thing that we actually need to do is we do need a way. There's a few different ways that we could actually make it so this works. It might work now, so we might as well just test it before we try to add in a fix for it. So let's just get it going. Okay, so here we are in the test game, and let's just make sure this works. So we're gonna go ahead and show the lists, and let's try going to the next one. Okay, so it's looking like it's not working. Let me just make sure that the value is actually being added to. It is. Okay, so there is a way around this, and that's what I was just talking about. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna use a loop, I guess. Let's go ahead and quit this. Okay, actually there is a problem. There's two problems. Number one was the list position, and number two is the list index value right here. This isn't supposed to be equal to, it's supposed to be different than. If it's different than that list, or actually, no, that can stay the way that it is, but we do need one that actually does handle if they're different from this, so that way they can actually be toggled off. Okay. So I just fixed the list management. I knew there was something wrong, because even though the list index was changed and the positions were off, that tree file list should have still been made invisible. So because it wasn't, that's how I knew this was the problem. So next up, we're going to be working on positioning the list. Okay, so I'm back, and I just finished positioning the list. I didn't want to make you guys sit through that, but I made all of their positions. Basically, it's relative to where the frame is and where the X coordinate specifically is. That way, no matter what, it scrolls with the screen. The Y position does stay fixed though. And then I also came down and I had to modify the show list, the hiding of the list, sorry. And the specific part is the show list off flag. Instead of it being like the showing list where it has it, okay, it's checking the list index to see which one is visible, to see which one is active, and then showing it, I just have it hiding all of the lists. That way, at first, when it's first turning on, all the lists are hidden. So now we're ready for a full test. Okay, so here we are. All right, and now we're just gonna press tab, and we're good here so far. Let's go ahead and put the show list on. And it looks like, yep, that's the first list. Second list, yep. Third, fourth, I don't know what that one is. Fifth, sixth, seventh. Why are all these lists blank? Must not have anything on them yet. I don't know how that's possible though. That's interesting. I'm gonna have to look at that, because one of them should be the buildings. No? Oh, there it is. Okay. Alright. So I'll see you guys back here in just a second. What we're working on next is actually putting in the commands to show this and to not show it, so we don't have to control it through the custom debugger. Alright, so I'm back, and I just did some prep work to get ready to start adding in the commands for everything. So right over here in the debugger collider, what we got going is the show list commands, and the show list command, sorry. And all it says is show list, and what we're gonna be doing is we're just gonna basically, we actually don't need this anymore. Okay, so the reason why we have the show list and we have all of the commands here is for two reasons. Number one, if it ever gets to the point where I forget the commands, I can come over here and I can also put in an event that allows me to basically display all the commands by saying like help or something like that. And second of all is we're actually going to be using each of these, and we're going to be comparing them to the text inside of the edit box. So let's get started with that now. So let's go ahead and start. Let me break this down. So right here is where we start the processing of the logic, the processing of the command. So upon pressing enter, and also it's checking to make sure that the edit box actually has something inside of it. That way it doesn't just process an empty, like an empty command. Process command, it's a new flag, and what it's going to do is it's going to basically just take us over here where it's going to actually check the text inside of the box to see if it's an actual command. If it is an actual command, the only command we have right now is show list. So if show list is the command and show list the flag is off, then it's going to turn it on and then reset everything for the processing of the command. Vice versa, if the list is already on and show list is then entered into the commands, then it's going to turn off the list and then reset everything. So now all we have to do is just test it. So let's see. What the? I don't know what's going on here. Hold on guys, give me a second. Okay, so there were a few problems with the debugger. Long story short, a bunch of old code that I'm planning to take out and rework was conflicting with the debugger's functionality. There were also some problems with the list being shown and hidden. It really came down to this showing list group of events right here. I had to add in the check for this access value. Basically, because I didn't have that, the list would be flickering off and on if I tried to hide the list after the command was shown. And then for the hiding of the list, I also added in another extra group of events just for if the debugger is hidden. It also just sets all of the file lists to hidden, just in case they are shown. I could have went through and actually added up here that what I wanted to do is just set the show list off, which would have just basically automatically made them all invisible due to what's going on down here. But I want the list to be on even if I turn the menu back off and then come back in again. So yeah, and then final problem was the edit box. Because the edit box actually takes in input, it does stop all other input for menus, movement, anything. So I have to come back in and actually set that focus to off in order for me to actually be able to move around after a command is entered in. So now that everything is caught up, we're really ready to test this. Let's make sure everything works correctly for our young version of how we're gonna basically be working with commands and stuff. Okay, so quick little note, I did have to start a new game because the other one that I had, it still works perfectly, but it's getting to nighttime, and nighttime is when things get real, so it's not really the best time to be testing things. So I just started a new game so we could just come through and just be testing things in the daytime. So now we're gonna just enter show list, and as we can see, all the list pops up. It does kind of bother me that they're shaky when he moves around, but I don't really know what to do about that at the moment, and we gotta move on. So yeah, we can see all the lists, everything's good, and now we press tab, everything's good again. We press tab again. Let's try this show list being turned off now. Perfect, and we should still be able to move. Yep, still able to move around and everything. All right, so we're ready to move on, guys. Alright guys, another successful day in the lab. We did everything we set out to do, which isn't light either. We added in the ability for the buttons to navigate the file list, then we added in our command processing system in our first command, which hides and displays the file list. Now we don't need the built-in debugger for controlling that. And of course, before everything worked, we had to also squish some bugs. First with the buttons, then with the navigation of the list, and finally our command system just froze up. Nonetheless, we got it all done, and our debugger is now one step closer to completion. In the next devlog, we're going to work on dumping info, first to the debugger, and then to a file. That way we can do post-diagnostics if the need be. Anyways, thanks everyone for joining me in the lab today. Leave a like if you enjoyed today's lab project, let me know what you think in the comments, and subscribe to join me in the lab for more experiments. Alright guys, have a good one, see you for the next one.